Welcome to the Tourism AI podcast, where we talk about all things at the intersection of artificial intelligence and tourism. Today we have Andreas, my good friend and partner, on the call again. And we'll be seeing more of Andreas because him and I have been talking about many different topics over the past few weeks. And every time we talk, it's like, hey, we should record a podcast because I think the tourism audience would be interested in what we're talking about. That is what we're going to be doing in and amongst other podcasts. And today we're going to be talking about a really awesome topic, one that I know me and Andreas both share quite a passion for, which is really the website of 2030, or what does a website in 2030 look like, or how do we prepare for the web of the future? You can sort of phrase it in many different ways. This conversation started really between Andreas and I, and actually Andreas and some of his clients. I've been having similar conversation with some of my clients. In fact, I was on a call today actually with a marketing leader out of the UK in the DMO space, who was just telling me that he was sort of preparing to build a new website. He was talking about AI and the role of AI and sort of how to prepare for a future ready website, and that's really kind of I think what we want to talk about today. So with that, Andreas, I know this is a topic you've been going deep on, and really this concept of a future ready website. When I say kind of a future ready website or a website of 2030, what does that immediately bring for you to mind in terms of some of the things people need to be thinking about?
Yeah, I think, if you think about in 5 years at 2030, and we're just looking at how the innovation in the AI world and the behavior change of all of us is moving so quickly, it's worthwhile to step back and think about, okay, I have a website. What role is my website playing in 5 years where my users are heavily using AI, and what does my website need to have? And actually, the deep dive that I did to understand this was actually triggered by one of our destination clients, because his board were asking, okay, we just launched this beautiful new website. Is it valid in the AI world in 2 or 3 or 4 years? And that really drove me to do a deep dive. And it was really interesting what I found, and how things are developing, and how it really is. Also, the last question is, okay, this is what we do today. Will this work in the future? And then I learned a lot during this process, and I'd like to share a couple of these learnings.
Please, yeah. So, yeah, what was the biggest learning, or the biggest aha moment you took away?
I think the biggest aha, there were actually two aha moments. One is, which was, from a user perspective, that a user will expect in the future that websites are doing something. So today when we go to a website, we see pages, we go to a menu, we click, we try to find the information. In the future, we might going to talk to a website and we want to have a very specific outcome. Book me a tasting for the wineries, or create me an itinerary. I'm planning to visit this destination. So it's really, I think the headline that I used in one of our blogs is from pages to assistant. How are websites developing? And I think it's a very valid point. If you look about an AI search that you're doing, you get an answer. And we will behave in the future in this way everywhere where we touch a website or anything. We have a question and we are expecting an answer. And I think in 5 years we actually expecting action.
Hmm.
And that's on one hand. So that's the human experience, including personalization and all kinds of stuff. I believe my personal, let's say, AI representative, let's call it this way, my agent, will probably talk to an AI interface of a website and potentially negotiate what I want, maybe even the way how the website looks. And there's a lot of underlying technology that needs to work together. So that's the human side. But the second thing, which was very interesting, is we are entering an agentic world where agents are executing tasks for us. And I was reading an article and actually a paper from the Cornell University about what's the role of a website in the agentic world. And number one, it needs to work nicely together, and it really needs to expose in this agentic world the capabilities of a website. And the conclusion for me is, in the future SEO, whatever it is, a website will not only expose capabilities and content to a user, it will do the same for AI agents. So it's kind of a second audience that is coming up, which
Yeah.
is pretty exciting and which means a lot of change.
It does. Yeah. So, and we're talking about websites, but we're really talking, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, about really the internet. And, would it be fair to say we're sort of building almost two internets now, one for humans and one for sort of agents? It's not two internets per se, but sort of two audiences or two personas. Is that sort of a fair way to think about kind of what we're talking about?
I think the second part. I think it's definitely that AI agents. And if this agentic web, if you really think about it, we have agents that do things, specific function. Plan my visit to Napa in our case here, or I'm planning to fly to Europe. Show what flight options do I have. So you send an AI agent out, and you can do it today, and it comes up with capabilities. In the future, the AI agent is ready to book. Today, we might log in and use an account or something. In the future, is ready to book. And these kind of booking functions and capabilities need to get exposed in a secure way by a website. And
Right.
I think it's really the second audience is probably a good way of looking at it. You get the human audience, which is using AI when it interacts.
Yeah.
Plus, you got AI agents that are doing work on our behalf.
And I think for that first audience, that human audience, I think the other piece that's really important and something that's I know you've been already working on for a number of years, but something that's going to become more important is audio, right? I mean, I just and video, right? Like I just envision a future where you're just talking to a website, or I know I've shown you the Microsoft video where I'm holding up my shoe and showing it what I have, and it can like look at it and make some decisions and show me a different shoe or whatever it is. So, also like multimodal, right? I think that's going to be a big part of, these two-way websites that can take actions on your behalf. And I mean, I personally think that typing is going to go away as a form of sort of, I guess, communication, and it's just going to be a fully audio or mostly audio kind of world. And so, how does that sort of fit into kind of how people should be thinking about their website development even today?
Yeah, 100%. It's one of the big things is we're going to talk to websites. Eric Smith, one of the founders of Google, actually wrote a very interesting article. Or it actually was an interview a couple of weeks back talking about the changes in the UI. The user interface will no longer what we are used to it today. It will become a multimodal and probably voice, which is our most natural interface, will be the number one interface in the future. One I did a keynote recently and I found an old video. When I grew up, I watched Star Trek. And I remember Captain Kirk and Scotty talking to the wall or to a display when they had a question and an answer came back. This was end of the 60s when these movies were done in the first episodes. And I showed this and it was very fascinating the way how this was done by Hollywood. But this is becoming reality now. We talk
Yeah,
to a device and we get an
yeah,
answer. We
yeah,
want to do something, make a reservation for me at an Italian restaurant close to me.
yeah.
That will be done
Yeah.
in the
Well,
future.
never mind. I'll be wearing my, Meta Ray-Ban glasses or my Google glasses, and I'll just be talking to those glasses, probably looking through a screen in my natural environment, one asking questions about, am I on the right trail or whatever, or to your point, I want to book, hey, I'm over here. What are some restaurants near me and things like that. So it's gonna be a very dynamic kind of world all of a sudden where you're going to have really interesting interfaces, I think, with technology that I think a lot of people aren't really imagining now, but we're already seeing it in like the glasses and those things that, they're starting to become pretty prevalent. And I think, if the more I think about sort of AI in tourism, the more I think it's becoming apparent that the traveler is actually way on the leading edge of this. It's actually the tourist that's like leading it, and destinations need to kind of stay in lockstep with the tourist and sort of make sure that they provide that good user experience and that sort of good and there's a lot of work to do, I think, across the board, around website development, SEO, GEO or AI, whatever.
Yeah,
There's lots of things people call it, whatever, but being found and connecting the dots between information sources, all those types of things. So there's a lot of work to do here. So, one of the things I've been talking more and more about when it comes to AI adoption for destinations, it's not just how to use tools better and how to use, ChatGPT, which is a big part of it, but also how do we prepare digitally as the future becomes more digital. And so, what are your kind of thoughts on that? Obviously, that's sort of a big part of what we're talking about here.
Last time we talked about how AI is changing search and the behavior that we as consumers will learn because we're going to start using it more and more. We are expecting answers. So we are looking at maybe ChatGPT, or we see the AI overview at Google, and that information will be a major factor of what we do as a next step. We might going to click on a link that's being exposed in these AI answers, and we might get a complete answer and move on with life and do whatever we want as a next
Yeah.
step. But what's important is these AI answers are different than traditional search. And for a destination, I think that the action item right now is making sure that you show up on AI searches, your visibility is high enough. Because it's a pretty black and white game. You're either going to be in or not. And you
Right.
can be great on traditional search as ranking on number one positions, but if AI doesn't feel that you have the authority not only on your website across different properties, you will not surface.
Yeah.
And you will be completely out of the value of a sales, let's say, funnel, which is
Yeah.
collapsing because of AI,
Collapse.
and you might be out of the game. So
Yeah.
I think that that's definitely call number one. And then call number two, which is a little bit more the midterm thing what we're talking about, the future capabilities of websites. If the website is not able to the information in a meaningful way, expose capability in a meaningful way, it will not be found.
Yeah, and I think that the risk for DMOs is if they don't get on top of this, then, other organizations could potentially kind of become the sort of source of truth or knowledge for the destination, right? So I think there's the DMOs need to get on this quickly, in my opinion. And, one of the topics I know I've been talking a lot about and I talked to you about is this concept of DMOs be sort of getting in the OTA game. And I think when you talk about this sort of agentic future and, the websites being able to actually make the booking on your behalf and all those types of things, I actually really see the DMO website as sort of the central point for a destination. And again, I think there's like, it could be a very upending kind of situation where all of a sudden the world gets flipped on its head. I have this model in my mind of like a social enterprise DMO kind of OTA, and I think there's a lot of benefit to it in terms of the DMOs already surfacing information about the accommodators, the attractions, the things to do in the region, the hikes, and all of the information is already contained nicely on the DMO website. And if they could just add the ability to book direct. What's interesting about it is one, it can become the one-stop shop for the traveler in all things in that destination. Two, it would really position the DMO well from a data perspective because now they would really know what's going on in destination in real time. So it would really solve that last mile data challenge, right? And so, I know that there's like a big idea, and I've been on this train for a while, and I've been talking to a lot of different people about it. And but I guess the question that comes out of that is, is that sort of the way when you think about these agentic kind of capabilities in the future DMO website, and obviously the ability to take actions. One thing missing for me on a lot of DMO websites is, okay, so I might find an accommodator through the DMO website. Now I'm going to the accommodator's website to make the actual booking. And so, do you see that this agentic sort of new web opportunity situation as an opportunity for DMOs to close that gap and close that loop?
Yes, and I think what will be very important is to expose the capabilities of the website. And I give you one example that I was just using in a workshop, and I showed it to people. I used an AI agent to just looking for a restaurant for me here. I used a local example in Napa Valley. Find me one of the best restaurants in Napa Valley for 7 p.m. on Saturday, which is most busy. I like to book on Open Table. So the AI agent was doing everything. It did all the research, and it came to the point where I had a link to my Open Table account that I could book. In the future, I can book directly in the answer of the agent. And this comes back to the capability of websites to expose booking function, to
Right.
expose creating itineraries, to expose tour guide functions, and all these kind of things, which comes back to the underlying technology. How is a website being configured that it can do these kind of things? And then the second part is this website needs to compete with other websites that have similar capabilities.
Right.
If a destination website has the benefit of many visitors, so they have more authority, they can actually be a big supporting function for the local business,
That's
that
right.
everyone who's important to show up on this I call it aggregator website, which really shows a complete destination. I think there's a real opportunity.
Yeah, I really do think so as well. And I'm just going to make a point too, because you were sort of talking about the booking experience, and really soon it's going to be you're not even in the loop, right? It could be the agents are doing the work and the booking's happening in the back of the, and or maybe it just sort of, gives you a list of here's the things you could do. Yeah, approved, and off it goes, right? So,
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Things are going to be happening automatically, which is an incredible, you talk about the funnel shrinking, like talk about, literally from here's my idea to here's a list of things you can do to, yes to one, two, and three, and then all of a sudden it's booked and it's done. I mean, it's incredible how much that's going to change
yeah.
really the dynamics of kind of all booking and all sort of, I guess, interaction with companies online, but in tourism especially, I mean, it's really going to speed things up. And what's really interesting for me, again, with this concept of the DMO as the aggregator website is, if the DMO has now also the ability to kind of tap into, oh, geez, it's really busy over here, but there's opportunities over here, and, over tourism, and start to deal with some of these bigger challenges, right? And maybe start to direct people based on what it, if it knows all of this information, it can sort of start to direct people. Is that I think it's a really big opportunity, and it solves many problems, I think.
And I think there's two big trends that are overlaying all of this. Is one is the personalization, and what I learned is actually personalization, but under my control as a user. I will define in the future how much personalization I'm going to see, and it's going to be a really big topic around privacy and how this is being handled. So there's a lot of innovation happening on that side. And the second part is security. There's a big trend to use passkeys. So it's no longer that we have passwords. It's a nightmare for people. If you book something, you need to log in. There's passkeys, and I think there's a future coming where we as users have more control about what's happening with our data and how much personalization do I want, and I control it, and what the privacy requirement is. It's actually interesting to learn that there's a lot of technology going, a lot of development in that direction, because in this new world, people might fear what's happening with my information. I don't even know what's being used, and I don't want to have an agent booking for me if I don't know it, and it's in control. So there's a lot of these underlying technologies and discussions going on,
Yeah.
which are really important to have in mind. And I think this actually points in a very interesting and positive direction.
I think so too. Yeah. And I think you kind of mentioned, like, I think there's going to be a bit of a prediction on how this is all going to roll out. Is there's going to be, people are going to be a little bit slow to trust at the beginning, but I think then it'll just take off like wildfire once the trust is there, and once, what I mean, once some of these kind of kinks are worked out, and it's going to be not a straight direct line, but it's going to, I think it's going to just become an exponential, and destinations really, I think, have an opportunity to stand out as providing just the most incredible user experience to the
Yeah.
traveler. Like, so, again, I think there's a really strategic imperative for destinations to really start thinking in this direction, and trying to kind of get ahead of their competitors, right? Because I think the opportunity is big. I have another question for you, and this, maybe you may or may not have this in the research you did, but platforms. So, I know a lot of, I don't think this is really a big thing in the destination space as much, but, kind of the templated platforms that have limited capabilities versus sort of a WordPress that's a lot more robust. Like, did you see in your research sort of platform advantages or ways people should be thinking from a platform perspective?
So when I started the research specifically, and I used ChatGPT, I used the deep thinking model, and I specifically said, look at manufacturer Shopify, Squarespace, what's Microsoft selling, what's some
Mm.
of the e-commerce platforms, and what is WordPress saying? Because WordPress is a technology that has over 40% market share today, and is used in a lot of the small, medium size configuration. A lot of destinations are using it actually. So
Yeah.
our client is using it. So I specifically, after I got the results, I specifically had a follow-on question and say, okay, we are using WordPress and we are using this page builder. How does all of this fit in? And very interestingly enough, the WordPress organization has actually established an AI group. They're deeply working in, what is required in this open world. WordPress is already a very open platform. It already supports a broad range of API connections. That's the ecosystem, which is a foundation for working with AI in the future. But there's other things like new protocols like MCP, A2A protocols. They're all coming now up more and more how agents are working together. So from the WordPress perspective, the positive news is probably we are currently on release 6 and 7 or something. There will be more AI focused interfaces be available, and the infrastructure that comes with WordPress as a foundation will be capable. That's the first good news. The second good news, our page builder that we're using is also going into a big new release, and it will have a lot of the human interface related innovations that will happen. So I could go back to my client, don't worry, this comes with the WordPress updates that you're having, this comes with the platform we are using. So I think it's worthwhile to think about this. What kind of platform and platform capability need to be inherent in the website? And I think this is when you make a decision today about a rebuild of the website, I think it should be a question. Is my website capable in 5 years to cope with this, to do these kind of functionalities? And I think we really need to have more discussions about this. Because a website is a big investment, it's more or less the core where a lot of information sits. In the future, I think they actually become more important because they are exposing capabilities to agents. They are the ones that really represent a destination or organization with information, with capabilities, but it needs to be able to live in this world.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I mean, there's obviously more tourism specific proprietary sort of platforms, and I'm not going to mention any of them here, but obviously you need to be asking questions about their product roadmaps and their AI roadmaps and their agentic future roadmap, sort of all those types of questions. And I think to your point, I personally feel comfortable. I know WordPress is, to your point, the leader in the space without any question. And so I'm always a fan personally of going with sort of the leader in the field, but it's an important part of the equation and the questions and the capabilities you're talking about, right? So what else kind of did you come across in some of the research you did?
So one thing is, what I found pretty interesting is that websites, and this is more on the agent side. So if you think about how agents will interface with a website, is really the concept of websites need to create attention for agents. They need to more or less market themselves with agent capabilities. Look what I can do. I can help you with solving this problem. So this is a second audience which will come up. We have the human side, but now we also have the agent to agent side. And that was just really interesting to think about this agentic web. And as I said, the Cornell University released end of July a paper. It's 80 pages. It goes very deep and kind of things. But if you summarize it, if you listen to some of the summaries, it's really interesting how the concepts. And 5 years in today's speed of innovation is a long time. But it really gives a guiding principle of where things will go. Some of these things might still need a couple of years to really develop full speed, but you never know in these
Yeah.
days how quickly these things happen. And as I said, when I looked at what is Shopify saying or Microsoft saying, all these big players, it points into a direction. So the foundation goes into a specific direction. That's why I also decided to write a blog about it, and really give an idea of what's happening in the future.
So I want to talk about a topic that I know pains a lot of people, but I think they're getting over the trauma, but it's chatbots. And I only introduce it that way because I know chatbots in the past, pre kind of chat GPT chatbots were not very good, and sort of lacking in capability, right? And didn't really meet the promise and all those types of things. And so unfortunately they kind of had a bad start, but I think they're evolving, they're getting better. I know, you and I, there's a couple kind of platforms that we've been talking about and offering and making available. But one of the things that interests me about chatbots, not about sort of which chatbot technology should use, that type of thing. That's a question you can have, I think, more on an individual basis. But the value of chatbots, specifically for destinations, in understanding the types of queries that are sort of people are asking, you know what I mean? So, I've referenced this interview a couple times, but I did a podcast with a person who sort of kind of built the chatbot for the Tourism Kelowna website. And, he said the most interesting thing that they've had in the experience so far was just the questions and the variety of ways people ask questions, really good insights because, they used to ask those questions to Google. Now they're asking the question directly to the chatbot. And two, understanding how the chatbot with, AI capabilities is responding to those questions and where it's getting the information from. And so there's this sort of two-way kind of dialogue that's happening. And I think that two-way dialogue is extremely helpful for people in preparing for this future of web and this agentic future and all these types of things. It starts to generate insights and starts to give us an understanding of what's kind of going on. So wanted to kind of get your thoughts on that and sort of, how people should be thinking about that part of the web.
Yeah, one thing that I was reading about is, the general chatbot that we find typically on the right side of a website. We click a button and then ask some question. That actually is not very successful. What is more successful is chatbots embedded in the web page that are specifically trained. Let's say I think about a destination website, and now you're on this page which talks about accommodation, and you
Mhm.
have specific requirements. Maybe you need a handicap room and no stairs, whatever it is. A chatbot embedded in this page, specifically trained on these requirements, that can be successful. A
Yeah,
chatbot that automatically creates itineraries, that can be very successful. So I think needs to be more integrated into the flow of action, what I'm doing as a user. It needs
yeah,
to be more, naturally providing support of what I'm searching for. I think that's going to be step one. And
yeah,
then step two, the chatbot will not only provide you information, it will also provide maybe action that's capable. Do you want me to book this? Do you want me to
right.
do this? And that comes back to what we discussed previously, where the chatbot really becomes a supporting hand for the questions I'm asking.
Yeah, because ultimately the chatbot's just the interface for the agent, right? I mean, that's really the way to think about it, the human interface, right? And so, but yeah, no, and for sure, and I think also when I think about chatbots is one of the things we're talking about here a lot is sort of vectorized databases and sort of kind of creating these knowledge graphs and sort of like also piecing all the pieces of information together so that because what's happening I think in search too, and this is that and I actually just did this the other day. When you're asking sort of to, you want to book a trip or you want to sort of, go do a day and wherever you are. And your kind of query is like a long query with a lot of information, right? It's not a Google search where it's like what to do in Venice or whatever. It's like, yeah, I got 3 kids. I want to go see this. I like dogs. You're going to put a whole bunch of information and then the ability for that sort of chatbot to make sense of everything and basically build you that dynamic itinerary. Really it's about organization of data in the back end and making sure you can connect all the data points. So, there's a data play to this whole thing as well, right? And it's not only the
100%.
data that's visibly public on your website, there might also be data that's either on your website, but maybe not visible to the public, but visible to the agents, and or even additional information that's sort of in a vectorized database or in some kind of more internal environment, right? So is that sort of kind of aligned with where you're thinking on this?
Yes, 100%. And Peter, your example that you used with a chatbot, one of the biggest surprises, what kind of question people are asking. That's a huge learning for a destination. You might not have the right information on your
Right.
website yet, but this gives you a very good guidance. What are people searching for? And the
Yeah.
best thing is, out of the questions, building a good FAQ structure.
Yes.
Because what's really happening, and this is very relevant for the AI driven search, is we need to anticipate more and more what people might ask us. And the content on the website needs to be structured in these kind of answer fashion.
Yeah.
People ask in the FAQ section is good. This is what we learned out of the recent chats, and you can build a big page and has all of this. And if you optimize it for AI agents, which are looking, an AI agent is not, when they build the answer, they are not reading the whole page. They are looking at the paragraph that talks about that's relevant to the answer. So you can learn a lot how your website should be structured and what content needs to be on there. So I can only recommend the earlier the better because the
Yes.
learnings will be there.
Yeah.
And it will make working with websites so much more natural. And we
Yeah.
talked briefly about the voice aspect. you will be able to talk to these chatbots, and they might respond. You might be in the car and you said, I'm on my way
Yeah.
to Banff, and this is what I want you to do. Can you book me a lunch place or something like
Yeah.
this? And it's happening in the background.
Yeah, interestingly, as you're talking, I'm also thinking about like, probably can connect it into weather data and probably connect it into, sort of traffic data in real time, like, a little bit down the line. But like now all of a sudden it's like, again, things like over tourism or sort of, oh boy, there's a big storm coming in, I got to change plans, kind of that type of thing. Oh, here's a museum that's open or whatever, you know what I mean? So really, I just feel like it's going to be this really dynamic environment and really, I think, really interesting, right? Traveler perspective, like literally, again, back to the Meta Ray-Ban glasses or whatever glasses, like, literally walking around in real time, talking to the DMO sort of website agent and changing environment and circumstances and sort of making decisions on the fly and booking. I mean, that's a whole different world than what we're used to, right?
Just think about, let's say, in your destination, there's a big sports event. Let's say
Yes.
a golf tournament. We work with a couple of the PGA golf tournament areas. Or there's suddenly a big music festival, which only happens once a year. So suddenly things are changing in real time. If you can integrate this real-time information into
Yeah.
the answers that the chatbot is giving, maybe to a very specific question, where can I
Yeah.
park? Where can I find a restaurant that's not so busy? That's going to be really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Or even taking that sort of thought process a little bit further, like just say you have a music festival and, you know, you need to sell 50 more tickets and whatever. And now can you do some kind of external push notification or whatever to people that are on the website or talking to the chatbot? Oh, by the way, hey, and completely dynamic marketing in real time based on real information. I mean, again, we're getting probably a little too excited about, data points and everything else, but I actually, again, I think that's where this concept of this sort of this DMO OTA is really interesting because if the DMO can become the sort of quarterback of that information and sort of bring piece all the pieces together, it's just a completely different travel experience. And it's, again, it's just like, oh, geez, hey, we need to, these guys are busy, too busy, and these guys aren't busy enough, and we can start to direct traffic and make sure everybody's winning, right? Because, like the other interesting thing about this whole AI answers kind of world we're in is that, the AI will often spit out an answer and that becomes the thing you do. And people aren't even going to question, right? And so it's sort of like, it's a kind of a zero sum game now where it's like, you need to be the answer, period. And so, that's where if the DMO is sort of the where people land and it has the sophisticated capacity on the back end, then all of a sudden it can start to direct, to get people to different places and move people around, right?
And I think also, Peter, the scenario you just painted, it's actually a great service for the community that you're in.
Yes,
Let's
I
say
think so.
you have the sports event or you have something special going on, and you can real time, direct people, help them. That's a huge service for the community
I think so.
you're operating in. I think there's actually, if you get to this position, there's a lot of benefit that will also get to the restaurants,
Yeah,
all the organizations that are doing things. I think that is a really good opportunity. I like the scenario that you just called
yeah.
out. But this will be enabled by data. You're 100% right. This is where you need to have external data sources and all the different sources coming together, being the grounding foundation for the answers that the chatbot will provide.
Yeah, it's going to be a very interesting world, I think, coming up, and obviously a lot of interesting conversations between now and 2030 or whatever it is. I mean, it's, to your point, it's a dynamic, changing environment, and we're sort of, guys like you and I are constantly trying to stay on top of it, figure out what's going on. That's again where these conversations and these podcasts between Andreas and I have all come from. Many conversations. When Andreas and I talk, we have I think every Friday now or something like that meeting in our calendar. And, it's like 10 topics every time, every time we meet because there's just so much going on, right? So, I mean, I think, what I would say is certainly, we'd love to talk to more people about this and, find out what people are thinking, where people are at. So certainly if you're a destination and you're listening to this podcast and you want to get in touch and sort of just talk about the future of web and the future of websites and me and Andreas love this kind of stuff. So do get in touch with us. And yeah, anything else before we sign off here, Andreas?
No, I think, again, Peter, thanks so much for having me. I think the website discussion we had today really ties nicely into the discussion we had before about the search side. And,
Yeah,
and, and both are actually married so closely together. And organic search plus the website, that's more or less the big value that destinations bring to travelers that are searching. What can I do? And I think this will be a great opportunity. I'm actually very positive. That when things are coming up, what's happening to the business, what we are doing as marketing agencies. We do SEO today. Is this valid in the future?
Yeah.
100%. It's just different.
Yeah. Yeah.
Our
That's right.
website's still valid, 100%, but they're going to be different. And
That's right.
you need to be really ahead of the wave to think it through so that you can make good recommendations to your clients.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah. Excellent. Well, we'll leave it there. Andreas Mueller Schubert runs Next Gen Destination or sorry, Next Gen Wine Marketing. WSI Next Gen Marketing is another brand and website that he runs, and then collectively together we have Next Gen Destination Marketing, and then we're also working collectively on the Tourism AI Network. So kind of a lot of things happening there. It's exciting for me to be working more and more closely with you, bringing our brands together, kind of recognizing, our strengths together collectively and, bringing real value to the tourism industry. So thank you, Andreas, for joining me today. And we will be, I think, doing another podcast soon.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter, for having me. Really enjoy it. Thank you.
You bet. Take care.